Casual. Today we're going to be doing yet another mock draft. There's not much to talk about till free agency, so we're just doing a couple mock drafts. And this is going to be a somewhat Senior Bowl related mock draft, as the Senior Bowl I think is wrapped up. So there's a lot of players that, their draft stock is rising, and maybe some that are even falling due to the Senior Bowl. So some of those players might go a little bit higher today in this mock draft. But it's another Monday, so another mock draft. And without further ado, we'll get into it. I'm going to try to vary my picks here. Now, first overall pick, a lot of people expect it to be a QB here potentially. But I just don't think the Titans are going to necessarily go with quarterback. I think they are going to take this opportunity to get a generational type player, as they said as their GM, I believe, said when he first got hired or whatever, that they weren't going to pass on a generational talent. And I think that could be referring to Travis Hunter, and that's who I'm going to have them go with here at the first pick. I mean, he's the first player to ever play basically every snap at corner and receiver. It's never been done. I don't think he'll do that in the NFL, but I do think he'll play one position fully, and then the other position I do think he'll play a decent amount in the NFL. And at 2 here, another team that could go QB, and there is a lot of traction towards the Browns and Giants taking quarterbacks, especially if the Titans don't go QB. But to switch it up a little bit, I'm going to have the Browns pair Myles Garrett with Abdul Carter, probably the best true defensive player in the draft, not including Travis Hunter because we don't know what he will do. Abdul Carter's probably the best just straight up defensive player. You pair him alongside Myles Garrett. They don't really have much outside of Myles Garrett. And if you're not going to go QB, I think Abdul Carter's the pick here. However, I do think quarterback goes for the first time in this mock draft. I think the Giants go with Cam Ward at 3. It's obviously between him and Shedeur. It's like a toss-up, honestly. I do think Cam Ward is the maybe not necessarily in my opinion, the slightly better quarterback, but I think he's the slightly more favored quarterback amongst the NFL. So I do think he would be the first quarterback taken off the board between him and Shedeur. So I do have the Giants going with him at 3. These next 2 picks are going to be pretty similar to what I've been doing, and that's McMillan going to the Patriots at 4 and Mason Graham going to the Jags at 5. I think it's just a perfect fit for the Patriots to go McMillan at 4. They honestly could go tackle like Will Campbell here as well. But I think they prioritize building around Drake May and helping Drake May as much as possible because he did not have much to work with, and he still didn't play that bad for a rookie. And you can finally give him a potentially franchise true number 1 receiver in McMillan, who's a big target, can make plays after the catch as well. So I like that for the Patriots at 4. And then with the Jags going Mason Graham at 5, I've always had this sort of be the pick. I think it just works perfectly. They can improve on that run defense with probably the best interior D-line in the draft in Mason Graham. You pair him with Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker on that D-line because you don't need a quarterback. You don't necessarily. It's pretty much probably at this point Will Johnson or Mason Graham, and I think they would go Mason Graham at 5. Raiders at 6. Now, they could be a team to go with a Will Johnson type, but with Shedeur still on the board, I'm actually going to have the Raiders go with Shedeur at 6. They don't have a QB. They got Pete Carroll as their coach, so I don't think I think they can trust what Pete Carroll can do with the defense because he's a very good defensive mind. But I think they go QB here. I like the fit for Shedeur and the Raiders in terms of I think he wants to play for the Raiders. And maybe even Dion will let him play for the Raiders. Jets at 7. They need help in the secondary somewhat. Sauce Gardner didn't have the best season last year after his great start to his career, but he's still a good corner, obviously. And then you got guys like DJ Reed, who's on the slightly older side. So I think Will Johnson as the best defensive player left is a perfect fit for the Jets at 7 because you're not going to go QB. If Shedeur's available, I could see him go QB. But if they go QB, I can see that being more towards the second or third round. Panthers at 8. Honestly, if McMillan's off the board, they probably just go best defensive player available. Their defense was very bad. And you could argue it's probably, a guy like Malachi Starks, Mike Green, maybe a James Pierce, a Michael Williams. But I think they actually go Jalen Walker here. It's been a common pick to the Panthers at 8, Jalen Walker. He can kind of bring that edge rushing as well as that sort of, off the ball type of play. And I just think with a team that needs so much defensively, they need help rushing the passer. They need help stopping the run. They even need help stopping the pass. I think getting a guy that can do at least multiple things, he's not just a true pass rusher, I think that would be a good fit for them at 8. Saints at 9, they need O-line help very bad, especially on the tackles. So I like Will Campbell here at 9, another common pick for me. They have a lot of question marks at tackle, and you can get the best tackle available at 9. I think that's an easy pick. Bears at 10, with the Ben Johnson hiring, you've seen potentially, do they go with Ashton Jeanty? Because you had the 2 running back system with Ben Johnson in Detroit, and now you can bring in Jeanty with Swift. I could see that happening, but Swift didn't have that bad of a season, and their O-line was horrible, and I think they have to address that more than just get a second running back, because Ben Johnson does like his O-line too, so I like Calvin Banks here at out of Texas to go to the Bears at 10. They need help on the O-line. Best lineman left on the board. Niners at 11. They could also go O-line here, but I think with a good pass, this is a decent pass. This is a pretty good pass rusher class. Now, yes, Abdul Carter and even a guy like Jalen Walker aren't available, but I do think the Niners, outside of Nick Bosa, they don't have much. They tried Chase Young, that didn't work. They have guys like Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos who are, just okay, but they don't have that true guy next to Bosa. And I'm going to actually, speaking of Senior Bowl, I'm going to have them go Mike Green here at 11, a guy who's had a very good Senior Bowl and also just a good player in my opinion in general. And I really like Mike Green to be that second pass rusher, true pass rusher taken off the board, and I like him to the Niners at 11. These next 3 picks are pretty common for me. Ashton Jeanty at 12 to the Cowboys I think is it makes so much sense. They desperately need help at the running back position. You're getting one of the better running backs we've seen in college. It's not too much of a reach at 12, and he's also said he wants to play for the Cowboys. I think it just makes perfect sense. Dolphins at 13, they could use help on the O-line, but they also could use help on defense. I think Malachi Starks at 13 is very good value. They need safety outside of Holland. Malachi Starks, best safety in the class, probably the best defensive player on the board. Perfect sense for me at 13. And the Colts at 14, I really like the Tyler Warren fit to the Colts because I do think they're going to try and help out Richardson this offseason, even if he's not 100% their future guy. I still think they're going to try and help him. And they have their running back. They have receivers. They have an O-line. They're just missing that tight end. And I think Tyler Warren at 14 is very good value for them to get that tight end to sort of complete the offense around their quarterback. Falcons at 15. The picks have sort of fluctuated, but it's always been edge for me. The Falcons need edge more than anybody needs any other position, their pass rush. It did get better towards the end of the season, but it was still not good. And with the edges available, it's pretty much James Pierce, Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart, or Nick Scorton here at 15. Shamar Stewart did have a pretty good Senior Bowl, so I'm kind of tempted to pick him just for the sort of theme of this specific mock draft. And you know what? Shamar Stewart had a very good Senior Bowl. He's maybe not fully developed as a pass rusher, but I think the Falcons, you're going to get some, maybe quote-unquote reaches, but I don't think this is too bad of a pick. I'm actually going to have the Falcons go with Shamar Stewart at 15. Cardinals at 16. They need help on the O-line. They have Paris Johnson, who they took a few years ago, but they probably need help alongside him. And why not get his fellow Ohio State tackle Josh Simmons at 16. Pair him alongside Paris Johnson. Help protect Kyler Murray and help him get the ball to guys like Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. Bengals at 17. Another team that just needs defense and probably needs the best defensive player they view on the board. And that's probably either Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame or Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. And I mean, it's you can decide who's the better player between these two, but I personally like Kenneth Grant to the Bengals at 17. It helps them in their run defense, pairs them alongside Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and those guys on that D-line. Seahawks at 18, another team that could use O-line, because you have Geno Smith for now at QB. I don't think you go QB here at 18. You don't need any skill positions. Your defense is very good. So I do think the one group they could really use is O-line. And there's no really interior O-lines worth taking at 18. You could go Tyler Booker, but I don't think he's a pick at 18. So I'm actually going to have the Seahawks go Josh Connerly Jr. I know there's a clip of him getting bulldozed by Mike Green, but I still think he's a good player. Seahawks need help on the O-line. I like that pick to them at 18. Bucks at 19. Really need help in the secondary. Benjamin Morrison is sitting right here. Makes sense to me at 19. Their secondary was not the best. You trust their D-line. You trust their offense as a whole. You trust their linebackers somewhat, but you don't trust that secondary. And Benjamin Morrison, the clear best corner available, and even probably the clear best defensive player available. Him or maybe like James Pierce or Michael Williams. Broncos at 20. I think they go Luther. I like Luther Burden here or Egbuka. I like receiver to the Broncos because you have Cortland Sutton, who's been great, but outside of him, you got Marvin Mims, you got Troy Franklin. They haven't had that true guy next to Sutton, and I think they go receiver here. I like Egbuka a lot, but I like Luther Burden just a little bit more at 20 to the Broncos. Pittsburgh at 21. I think they also go receiver here, and they get the next guy out of those two in Emeka Egbuka. Who knows what's going to happen with Pickens? Who knows if they're going to trade him or not? I don't think they trade Pickens. And at QB, they're not going to keep both Russ or Fields, but whoever they keep, they need to be able to throw the ball to somebody outside of Pickens. And I think Emeka Egbuka is perfect for them at 21. Chargers at 22. Another team that could use receiver, but they kind of missed out on those two at 20 and 21. And, I mean, you could go running back or tight end, but I don't think you take those guys at 22. So I think you shift your focus to the defense, especially the edge, because outside of, you have Joey Bosa, who's on the older side, and then we don't know what's going to happen with Khalil Mack. He could leave, he could retire, not this year, but he could retire soon. So you kind of have sort of an older edge rush room, DN room, whatever. So I think you can get some youth there, as there's still very good edges left, and I think James Pierce is the pick here at 22. I think he's the best edge on the board, and it's probably him or Michael Williams, but I would go James Pierce at 22. Packers at 23. I think they could go edge here, but I think they need corner more than any other position. Again, interior line you could argue, but there's not too much worth taking at 23. But there are corners worth taking, whether it's Jahdae Barron or Siobhan Revel. And I like corner to Green Bay because there is uncertainty with Jair Alexander. He very well could leave. And if he leaves, you don't have much else in that corner room. So I like bringing in Siobhan Revel into that secondary alongside guys like Xavier McKinney, especially if Alexander leaves. Vikings at 24. I think they go with the other corner of the two that I mentioned. I think they go Jahdae Barron. Is probably one of their weaknesses because they have their QB at least for this season, for next season, whether it's Darnold or McCarthy. You have your offense around them pretty set, but your defense, especially your secondary, could use some help. And I like Jahdae Barron, especially considering he's probably the last corner worth taking in the first round, so you don't want to miss out on that opportunity to get one of those second tier ish corners. So I like Jahdae Barron to Minnesota. Houston at 25, I think you have to go O line here. Now, do you go tackle or do you go interior? Now, I was talking about how Tyler Booker may not be a guy you take at picks like 18 or 20 or whatever, but I could see him going to the Texans at 25. And it's either you go him or you go one of the tackles, whether it's Membo, Millum, Zabel, Cameron Williams, Ursary. But I think they need to address the interior a little bit more than the tackles. So I like Tyler Booker to the Texans at 25. Because I know he's just one guy, but you have Laramie Tunzel as your solidified franchise left tackle. And I think you can get a good guard to help that interior line. But they just need to get O-line in general. Because Stroud was sacked way too much. Rams at 26. Another team that could use help on the O-line. They could also use some secondary help, but I don't know if there's any corners you'd take at 26. You're not going to take a tight end or a linebacker. I think you go tackle here. And I think the best tackle, at least for my wide range of knowledge, I'll go Wyatt Millum here to the Rams at 26. Help out that O-line. There's a lot of good tackles you could choose from, but I'll just have them go Wyatt Millum. Ravens at 27. They could probably use help on the defense. You could go receiver as well, but don't think you could go with a guy like Matthew Golden, Tez Johnson at 27. But I think they shift their attention more towards defense. And I think if you see Mykel Williams sitting on the board at 27, you're running up to the podium to take him. I think that is great value for Mykel Williams. And the Ravens could use help on that edge. They have an older D-line, so I think getting a younger guy like Mykel Williams could be very good. Lions at 28, another team that could use edge help. They're obviously getting Aiden Hutchinson back, but outside of Aiden Hutchinson, where do you get your pass rush? Because you have good interior with, Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader, but you don't have that edge pass rusher outside of Aiden Hutchinson. And again, it's a good class for that, especially in the range of where the Lions are picking. And you got a guy like Nick Scourton available. I think it makes sense for the Lions to go Nick Scourton at 28. Commanders at 29. Another team that could go edge here. I don't think they go receiver or corner. There are some good edges and some good tackles available. They probably go one of these two. But a guy who had a great Senior Bowl, especially day one, I think was his best day at the Senior Bowl, is Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. I think he can kind of play, I don't think he's necessarily going to be a tackle. I think he maybe could play in the interior of the O-line, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the Commanders could just use, because they got a lot of guys out of free agency, like Allegretti and Biadasz, but they don't have any guys that they really drafted in that O-line, at least recent draft picks. And I think Zabel, who had a good Senior Bowl, can bring in that versatility, that youth and versatility in that O-line, while still having, he's a senior, so he has a little more experience than maybe some other guys. Bills at 30. I think they need help on that D-line. I think they need help on defense. It's a very old defense, veteran-led defense. And one guy who hasn't really gotten mentioned because he's an interior D-lineman and not many teams have needed an interior D-lineman past Mason Graham. And that's Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. I think he's probably the best interior D-lineman outside of after Mason Graham. And I think for the Bills to get him at 30, it's tremendous value. Pair him alongside Ed Oliver would be a very good D-line duo, interior D-line duo. Eagles at 31. They're probably the best roster in football and probably the most complete roster in football. So it's kind of hard to find what they need. It says here they could use some edge, and outside of guys like Nolan Smith, they don't really have the youth at the outside edge rusher positions, because you got, of course, Jalen Carter interior wise, and they had Hassan Reddick, and then they moved on from him, and then they brought in Bryce Huff. But I could see him go edge here, so I'll go with the next best edge probably, which is Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State at 31. Again, it's hard to find what the Eagles take because they don't really have a lot of needs. Chiefs at 32, although a very good team, they do have needs, and that is at the tackle position. Their tackle position was so bad that they needed to put Joe Tooney, who is a guard. They had to make him play tackle for the playoffs just because they didn't have anything else at that position. So they need tackles, and they're still good tackles. You can go Membo, you can go Karen Williams, you can go Ariante Ursary. Probably any of those three guys makes sense for the Chiefs at 32. And I'll just go with Armin Membo out of Missouri, somewhat close to Kansas City, so maybe he's a Chiefs fan growing up. I don't know. But we'll go Membo at 32 to the Chiefs. Quickly zoom out here to see the full board. So that will do it for our mock draft for this Monday, the post Senior Bowl, pre-Super Bowl mock draft. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like as always. Hit the subscribe button. That helps the channel out a lot. If you subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you don't miss more as we're getting ready into draft season and NFL free agency and the NFL offseason. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.